if you would all just maybe start by introducing yourself and what organization you're with and the mission behind that organization. We start with you, Angela.
My name is Angela Washington. I am the Director of Resource Development at City Rescue Mission. I am a veteran for the United States Marine Corps. And City Rescue Mission has been in the community for 77 years. We have been changing lives through the healing gospel of Jesus Christ. We take care of those who are hungry, homeless, and we are the only organization that has a free residential recovery program throughout Northeast Florida.
Thank you.
I'm Jerry Holland. I'm your Duval County property appraiser, at least until June 30th of this year. I've had the fortunate opportunity of serving you in a couple different capacities. One on the Jacksonville City Council and as council president from 99 to 2005. And then as supervisor of elections from 2005 to 2015 for 10 years. And then as your property appraiser. Often people say they write a check to me. You have never written a check to me. If you have, you've written it to the wrong office. That's the tax collector. Our role is to value you, not to tax you, okay? So sometimes don't value me so much, but that's our role, is to value all 390,000 parcels in Duval County and to administer the exemptions that are in Duval County. And that's our role. That's what I do now.
I'm Brad Ford. I work in a variety of capacities in the real estate business, but my primary role is working as a director of maintenance for a company called Ford Family Investments, which is in the luxury apartment space here in Jacksonville. We have about 2,500 units. We're a family-owned operation that just values integrity and high ethical conduct and providing the best quality housing that we can provide in the city, and we take a lot of pride in that. Thanks, Brad.
Deshaun Nix. I'm running for City Council at-large Group 5. My why is I have a high love for God, a high love for people, and a very high love for my city. I feel like this is the greatest city in America. My wife is retired Navy. She served our country for 22 years. I'm a girl dad. I want all of our princesses to feel safe in their own communities. I'm a small business owner. I also run a nonprofit, and I'm all in. I love this city. I've been hearing for the last 30 years about the potential of Duval, and I believe that through collaboration and partnership, we can actually fulfill that potential with innovation and collaboration, and I'm all in.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you all. I'm going to piggyback on where you went with that, Deshaun, and ask about your why. If you guys can think about it, you all have found your way into positions of leadership, and I'm sure you worked hard and had a calling that took you there. Maybe you could help us unpack that path for you and what that why looks like. Did I start with you, Angela? Yeah?
My why. City Rescue Mission is kingdom purpose. We are a ministry missions. We're missions right here in the United States. I know that a lot of missions are overseas, and we have an opportunity to change lives through the Word of God. We have 3 campuses, and we see a lot of broken people that come through our downtown campus. And an opportunity to pour into lives and to restore hope and to allow change to take place is rewarding every day. So I don't see it as a job. I see it as a ministry that God has called me to do. My department is responsible for raising all of the money for the mission. So it keeps the programs and services free of charge of anyone that walks through the doors.
That's great. Thank you so much.
On the why, I want to read you something that we have in our office that I think exemplifies why I do what I do and why our office. It says the taxpayer is the most important visitor on our premises. They are not dependent on us. We are dependent on them. They are not an interruption in our work. They are the purpose of it. They are not an outsider in our office. They are part of it. We're not doing them a favor by serving them. They are doing us a favor by giving us the opportunity to serve. And that's really The why being involved in it. Growing up in a family, my father was 32 years in the military. Public service was just something that seemed natural. You really wanted to help people. And whether it was on the city council when I first started, of helping, or elections trying to make them fair and accessible, it was always about helping and making sure, we were the ones, when you're elected, serving the public, not the other way around. And that's what drives me every day, is to go in and treat everyone in a way that, often people go, wow, your staff did a wonderful job and you gave us such special treatment. And the reality is that's what I want everyone to feel. And so that's what drives me every day, is to do better than I did before and give everyone that feeling that they definitely got special treatment when they came into a government office.
Why for me, I kind of fell into it. I got the opportunity in my early 20s to work under a really great property manager, and I just took it as an opportunity because I was in my early 20s and I thought, I won't do this forever, but I got this opportunity now, so I'll take it. And so I did. And I did not expect it to be a career I'll be 49 this year, so I've been doing this a long time. I did not expect it to be a career. I just kind of thought I was going to do something and do it for a little bit. But what I found was that housing is really a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun working with a lot of different kinds of people and having to figure out a lot of different kinds of problems. But most of all, I just love taking care of people's needs. I didn't know that about myself until I started doing it, and I was good at it. And so I just continue to do it, and I feel like at this point, God really has placed me in this position. I see that more and more, and He's continuing to grow me and stretch me. And so it's really a lot of things. It's ministry, kind of front lines, like dealing with a resident who may have an issue, or a team member who may be having a problem, or a supplier or vendor who needs some encouragement. It could be any number of things throughout the day. In the process, I get to have fun and fix things and do it okay. So it's kind of win-win.
That's great. That's right. Let me take a step back. So now we have Jerry, we have Nahshon, civil servants, if you will. Angela representing the nonprofit space, and we have Brad, private community. So we have a nice mix in the panel here. Let me start with a question. This is a little bit broad, but what characteristics do you see for a vibrant, healthy city? And I'm going to start with Nahshon with this question. Maybe to give you a little more with that, are there any characteristics that you're seeing, or characteristics that you see Jacksonville aspiring to do, or things that other cities might be looking to us as an aspiration?
Yes. After kind of surveying the north side or the northwest side of Jacksonville, we have a great opportunity with infrastructure and innovation, especially when you start talking about upgrades with the Emerald Trail, the autonomous vehicles. I think Nat Ford said that transportation is a great equalizer. We have a lot of talented people on the north side of Jacksonville that may not be able to make it to that high-paying job on the south side. So if we can neutralize or level out those type of barriers to increase income, I think we want to have a very vibrant, healthy economic community, and then leveraging incentives for a vibrant downtown Jacksonville to see how we can attract corporations to be able to hire some of the folks in these communities that are very brilliant, very bright, just looking for opportunities, not just at entry-level positions, but mid-level and upper management. And then looking at different models pertaining to our city. I don't understand how Atlanta can beat us in distribution when Duval is the king of the South. We have all the intermodal assets when you're looking at highway, waterway, railway, and airway. This is the foreign trade zone, and if we're able to get any flagships to be able to take products out of Duval to a foreign country, that would create a huge economic ripple effect for the entire city. And then looking at models from Atlanta, from Austin, from Charlotte, I really see Jacksonville on the cusp of doing something very great. But obviously this is not a one-woman or one-man show, so it's going to take a lot of, I'm going to throw this one at the beach, not just by partisanship, but by partnership.
Jerry, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think really when you look at a vibrant community, it always starts around a vibrant downtown, a vibrant city. You look at the beaches, it's, you first are identified a lot with the city area of the beach. You're looking at, we were talking earlier about how this city is not really one city, it's like a multitude of communities. But what makes it vibrant also is you can't leave any part of that whole community behind. And that's the hard balance that the city has had over the years, is there's parts of our communities that have failing infrastructure. You look at the parks, they're not kept up, things of that nature. And then other areas are in great shape, and because of public-private partnership, like the Ford Company does in the Bay Meadows area and things like that, we've got great parts of our community, but it's getting the entire community to, again, they say a rising tide rises all boats, but in our community, there are areas that are left behind. And that's our challenge, is to bring every area up, but at the same time also create a vibrant downtown that has the identity. The identity of a city is often its downtown. And that's where we've missed over the years, is we'll get moving. We talk about being a potential city, and we have, between the beaches, a river going right down the middle of our city, all these assets that we've got, but we still are always on the cusp of being a great city. And it's really, at some point, trying to bring the entire city up and really make our downtown vibrant.
Yeah, that's great. I hear a theme a bit with the connection. We talk about transportation, Nahshon, some of the gaps there to close in downtown. We have a big city. It's 800 square miles, right? So closing those gaps and bringing people together. That's great. Let's talk about public engagement with local politics. I'll start with me. I've been in Jacksonville 15 years, raised a family here, love the community. Sunshine Park is excellent. We get to enjoy all the amenities. I am the classic culprit. I know so little about local politics. Sometimes years past, I haven't even voted. Maybe I'll just admit it's a miss. But can you talk through local politics and the importance of engagement and where we might be moving as far as, are we moving closer or further away from that? And why is that important? Maybe I can leave that one with you, Jerry.
All right. We could probably take the whole show on politics in Jacksonville and the history of it. As mentioned, we are not nonpartisan. We're partisan, but we have a unique concept that we have unitary elections, which allows, in the election coming up, if you're a Republican, you can vote for a Democrat, vice versa. So we allow that to happen, but we show the party. The reality is 40% of Republicans and Democrats will only vote for Republicans and Democrats. It goes back to what was mentioned by the mayor and stuff like that, is they identify with one party and think only that party has the solutions. So you have to overcome that barrier. But from a standpoint, it is very much partisan, but also when you talk about your turnout and about people not turning out, I was talking earlier, and it was a matter of, our local elections have the lowest turnout. That's phenomenal. Yet local government touches the people more than state or federal on a daily basis, whether it be zonings or whether it be taxes, all the things that hit you, sales taxes, sometimes even locally, but local government, less than a 30% turnout, state, 50%, federal, presidential, 75% turnout. Getting people to understand, how their vote makes a difference and how local government plays such a part in it. But again, the apathy of voters is often driven by the negativity of campaigns. We get to the point of going, none of them are any good. Why should I vote? I mean, that's the spirit of when you read all the negative ads, is like, why all these people are crooks or criminals or something, or why should I even vote? So it's getting beyond that, the negativity, but you really have to do your homework and you have to get engaged. I've at supervisor of elections held an election, it was tied. Neptune Beach, it was a tied race. So to say one vote doesn't matter, talk to those two candidates. It was decided by a flip of the coin. I have one that was within 2 votes of a state house seat. Votes do matter. But the whole partisanship, it is what it is. People are going to run with the party, and but people are going to only vote sometimes with the party they want. but we really need to look at the character of the candidates at the end of the day.
Hey, Sean, you want to jump on that one?
Yes, I think that Jacksonville is unique. I think that one of the great things that we're having is we're starting to see an increase in diversity. And I believe that our diversity is what's really going to help us shift into that bold new city of the South. Historically, this is Black History Month. When you come from historic oppression, sometimes you feel as if your vote does not matter, which means it makes someone like me or of a minority background, when you're trying to turn out a vote, you have to do so much education from your potholes to your parks and recreation. And when it comes to the potential of this city, I believe that we're going in the right direction. I believe that with that diversity and with inclusion, it's going to force all of us, as Matt was saying earlier, to walk in that high level of integrity. So that way we don't have more of a favor system, we have more of a productivity and process system that's going to be more and more evident. But like you said earlier, it's that bottom-up leadership, working with those community stakeholders, equipping and empowering them to let them know, listen, from precinct to precinct, neighborhood to neighborhood, helping them form those neighborhood associations to where they have an active body to be able to have a voice when it comes into local government. And even when it comes to at-large, I know when I'm talking on the north side of Jacksonville, they don't even know what an at-large council person does. So basically we have 5 at-large, which also covers the beaches, Baldwin, north side, east side, west side, meaning you don't just have one district person, you have 5 at-large that gives you 6 council people that you can call on whenever you get ready. Whenever you have a problem, you have 6 council people that work for you. And just that little bit of information alone, it kind of helps keep our constituents at least aware and abreast that somebody's listening to their concerns and their voices being heard. But then looking at it from a partnership perspective with the public sector, I believe the public libraries, we should have the best public libraries with innovation, technology, the best parks and recreation, and then even working with organizations like City Rescue Mission. I was sharing with Ms. Washington. My father brought us to Jacksonville. My stepfather brought us to Jacksonville because my mother struggled with substance abuse. And my stepfather thought that Jacksonville, with no family, no friends, would be a great place for hope and a better future. And I'm so glad that he did that over 30 years ago. But needless to say, the same drugs in New York are the same drugs in Jacksonville. And fentanyl, being preventative and being proactive, actually took my mother's life. So I'm very grateful that there is a facility in our city that when folks are struggling with addiction, they have a place where they have a safe place to go to. But it's so much information that people don't know. We got some brilliant minority business owners that have no clue about Jacksonville small emerging businesses. They have no clue about the economic development with the city of Jacksonville. And sometimes the Jax Chamber may be a little bit intimidating for small businesses, but we want them to know that we want their businesses to be successful right here at home. And I think as we continue to retell our story, there is a dichotomy, meaning that typically once you cross over that Matthews Bridge into the north side, all you hear about is Jacksonville is a murder capital for the state of Florida. We can shift that narrative. And it's going to take all of us to help shift that narrative to where when we say Duval, we're talking about Duval as its entirety. We want you to spend a day at the beach. We want you to spend a day in Springfield. We want you to spend a day at the river. And we want you to spend a day at the game watching the Jaguars win.
Amen. Let's take that and move over to the nonprofit space. So at City Rescue Mission, can you tell us a little bit about how you work with the local government here and how that's helping you, or maybe where you have some needs or awareness that you want to put out there?
Well, we have a relationship with JSO. And so when they are on their beat or in the community and they find someone who is in a state of homelessness and or someone who is addicted and need our help. Our downtown location is called the Front Door. We're the lowest barrier shelter here in Jacksonville, meaning that you don't have to have an ID, you don't have to have any type of identification, papers to come in. Our concern is to come into shelter and let us take care of you. And so we have that relationship where they come all the time. We have a program which is called the Crossroads Program, and it's a 6-month recovery program, and it's court ordered. So anyone that's going through drug court can have a choice. Either you serve time or you go into a recovery program, and we're there to help. Our residential recovery program is anywhere from 12 to 18 months. It is a full holistic program. Everything's provided for the men and women in our program. So they have intense individual and group counseling. They go through, it's a faith-based curriculum, workforce development. We help them get a job. We have invested in our community with owning 15 houses. And so once someone has graduated the program and they are fully employed, they can rent a room in one of our Homes of Hope Living Sober Community. Another aspect too of funding, a few years ago, we needed to diversify what we do, and City Rescue Mission owns 4 businesses. One of it is our 15 houses that we own that is revenue. And our definition of a social enterprise is, 1, it provides revenue to City Rescue Mission. It provides employment opportunity for men and women in our program, and it impacts the community for positive change. We are chocolatiers, Carish Chocolates. We provide all of the brownies to the Loop stores here in Jacksonville and also Cross Creek. And the beauty about that, the 2 people who are our chocolatiers are graduates from the program. And so it's just a wonderful way of giving back and impacting the community. We have a thrift store on Normandy Boulevard, and we recently just opened Charis Cafe. Charis meaning grace. We operate under the grace model. And that's one thing we show the men and women, women and children that are in our program. It's God's grace.
That's great. That's great. So tell me more about the graduates, because one thing we're going to touch on today is housing. What is the long-term picture? A graduate works through your program, they're a success story. What is the living situation, housing look like for some of those success stories after they leave?
So if we have space available in the Homes of Hope, they can rent a room, and everything's included. Their rent, their electricity, their water, the landscaping, and they can stay within the Homes of Hope sober living community for a year. If they need to stay longer, then they have to work a plan, because there is someone else waiting to move in. So it's a safe, sober environment while they're still healing. We also work with them to move to the next stage. So we don't believe in giving a hand out, we believe in giving a hand up in that.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. And starting with the public-private partnerships, I know there's a wonderful park, a city park at Bay Meadows and 9A that has your family's name on it. Can you tell us a bit about how that came about, the decision for that?
Yeah, certainly. We work in the Bay Meadows area with a number of apartment units right there at 295 and Bay Meadows Road, and the communities were doing quite well, and we were kind of spitballing ideas within our organization of, okay, so we want to give back. What would that look like? And we played with a few different ideas, and somebody in our organization reached out to a city council member and came up with the idea of doing a naming rights for what was the Bay Meadows Regional Park. And so what we did is we did a 10-year deal with the city to name it. That's great. Yeah.
So, thinking about real estate, this is a little more of my wheelhouse, but I feel like there might be a perception that rents are going up, cost of living for all of us, whether you're a homeowner or renting. We all know that in the last few years this has gone up big time. The perception for apartment owners that rent is going up and these owners are just getting richer. Can you talk through some of the cost side and some other factors that might be behind the scenes for the housing community in the private space that people might not be aware of?
Sure. During COVID and post-COVID, we in the rental housing business have seen massive price increases, just like everybody has. And for example, we used to pay $700 to have a hot water heater installed. We paid $1,600, post-COVID. Air conditioners we could get for $1,500 to $2,500 installed. We're paying $3,500 to $4,500 now. A couple of examples of costs: carpet, flooring, all those kinds of things are up, and wages are up, and we're having to pay our team more to keep up kind of with the construction wages that are out there, where they can easily get jobs if they want to do that. So those are a couple of examples. The cost of building new construction has just become astronomically expensive. Land is very expensive, and building new units is very expensive. I've seen the cost. When I got into business, it would cost about $80,000 a unit to build an apartment. We're up at over $200,000 plus a unit now. So it's costs are up.
Yeah. And the interest rates, right? That's affecting,
of course.
Yeah. So here we have Brad, and he's not alone. There's other developers and apartment owners out there that are dealing with high rents that they need to charge. And then we have Angela and the story of moving her graduate through the system. There is obviously some gaps there as the cost of living is going up. And what are we doing? What opportunities are there to start filling some of those gaps? So let me start with sticking on the property taxes for a bit, because that's your sweet spot, Jerry. But do you have anything to add to that?
Remember, I value you out of tax.
He values us, he doesn't tax us again. He's blushing.
Yes. Well, first of all, we really see the market because that's what we're observing throughout the year. You've got to realize of the 200,000 homestead exemptions, about 2/3 of the property are owned by homeowners who that's their permanent residence. 1/3 of the residential units of houses are owned by investors. And that is good and bad, because it means they bought these houses. The good side of it is many times they'll buy a house, they'll fix it up, either flip it to for an investment, or they will rent it out, which adds more value to the property. We see that constantly. But there's been a lot of things, and obviously we see the value as was mentioning of the values of apartments going up, homes going up, because it's supply. That's supply and demand. When the interest rate was low, the demand was high. Builders, the cost was going up because of that demand. Supply chain problems also made the cost of materials going up, driving the prices up. People were, in a sense, many times saying, "This is a great time to sell, but I can't afford to buy something else." It was really good. But the good news, bad news of the scenario is the market is softening. The value of homes are not rising as much. There were double digits. Thank God for Save Our Homes exemption that kept your property tax from going up too high. But in a sense, the market is softening. And part of it's because of the interest rate going up, and part of it's because, again, the demand not being there from both the investors as well as the homeowners during this period of time. And you will see some of the home prices coming down. So that's some of the reflection that we can tell from our office. But again, we're more of the one looking at the snapshot, what's happening, so that we can, again, value property accurately.
Right. That's great. And Brad, the apartments don't get the homestead exemption, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So any non-homestead property has a much higher level that it can be raised every year, and they typically do that. I mean, it's certainly when we've seen these massive increases in apartment values and costs, and record sales. I mean, you read about the paper all the time. That is pushing, our values up. It's pushing our assessments up with the city, and that, of course, means more costs, and it's pretty substantial.
Yeah. Nahshon, are there any programs that we're aware of to help close that gap, either government subsidized or what does affordable housing look like, and how can the government participate in that, Jackson?
Number one, thank you, Mr. Jerry, for educating us on that, and then from the apartment concept, Brad, for that. For me, when I look at the most land-rich city in the United States of America, I see a ton of opportunity for mixed income and mixed use development. Now, I'm not in office yet, but while in office, I would like to see how we can increase density pertaining to more homes that are being either for multifamily or single-family developments. There are federal funds that are set aside from the Sandowski Fund for first-time home buyers to help people with the purchasing of a new build. But then you also have the NACA program, and then we have what you would call CDCs, Community Development Corporations, like Wealth Watchers, Metro North CDC, and those are just a few of the many. Another thing that I've been doing research on is LIHTC, Low Income Housing Tax Credits. If we're able to basically get developers to build in certain communities, but at the same time, we're also able to help a developer bring in a grocery store, even if it's not a full service, but a co-op within walking distance of a form of other retail, whether it's clothing, plus maybe even a medical facility. Now this is a community where someone can live, eat, work, and play. So basically it becomes like a community reinvestment within itself. There's different CRAs that are already in place within our city that are set in place through the state legislature that we may be able to leverage as well as tax increment funding that may also be in place, which goes into the development of downtown to help us build it as they come to where we're able to increase that inventory, that density. There's a ton of options that are out there, but I want to go back in again and say that this is going to have to go through by partnership. This is not just government. This is not just the private sector. This is everybody adding their input to help us accelerate this growth that's needed within this city. But I am aware of pain points with developers pertaining to when it comes to change of use, certificate of use, permitting, so maybe even looking at creative ways to extend hours or maybe even going into weekend hours to where we can increase that clock speed to get stuff done.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, from my perspective in commercial real estate, that is definitely a challenge, is the time to get permitting completed. So that's awesome. That's great to say. So let's pivot over into the bipartisanship at this point. I'm going to ask you guys a big, vague, bold question, but so we all know our country's fallen into partisan tribalism and partisanship, and I think we can all agree most of these issues are fairly disconnected from the potholes, which I think, so from your position in leadership, what can we do to promote more bipartisanship? And let me start with Nahshon, back to you.
All right. One of the things that we do have to address pertaining to the city of Jacksonville, when we look at our current council, is typically a Republican leaning. There's no way, and like I said, I'm the only black male Democrat running for a citywide position. There's no way I can come in and just dictate everything that's going to happen in council and get it passed. It takes several committees before it actually goes to the general council for them to vote on whether or not this bill should be passed. And it's going to take 10 votes. It takes 10 to win. We're not going to get bills in play or complete if we don't have that bipartisan partnership. So it's going to take the community stakeholders sacrificing a Tuesday night, sacrificing to come to a land use and zoning meeting, sacrificing to come to a rules meeting, sacrificing to come to a finance committee meeting, or sending a community elder out to make sure that their voice is being heard, to where this is not the Knicks agenda, this is the people's agenda. This is something that's not going to just impact one community, this is going to impact our entire county. So I think there's no way we can move forward without that bipartisanship. And I think probably one of the best to do it was Jake Gobble. A few years ago, Nathan, I was at Cotton's barbecue and I'm seeing people crying. And I'm like, what is going on here? And they're like, Jake died. And Jake hasn't been in office in over 20 years. But they didn't feel like they lost a politician. They felt like they lost a statesman. And I think that if we have elected officials, district by district, that have those shared values of their constituents, of the people that live here, that love here, I believe we can really get a lot of great things done in council.
Jerry, 24 years civil service. Thoughts?
Yes, 24 years. In fact, we were talking earlier, I'm the longest continuously serving elected official in Duval County of either parties. Boy, that makes you feel old.
You look great.
Thank
Looks
you.
better than
Thank
your picture.
I appreciate that. But that being said, going back to you, it's interesting, and we want government to be nonpartisan. We want it to be that. But here's an interesting fact. A nonpartisan candidate, an MPA candidate without party, has never been elected in the city of Jacksonville. Now, so if you think that we don't think about party, we do. Consciously or unconsciously, we do. And the divide in this country is really great from the top to the bottom. And it's sad because you can't get anything done, when it's divided like that. And it's a lot of times it's rhetoric, it's blaming, and both parties do it. Let me tell you, I'm a Republican. The Republicans will blame Democrats. It's their fault. Democrats will blame Republicans. It's their fault. You wonder whose fault it is if it's each other's fault. But it has to stop at some point because, as you said, you can't get anything done. Now on the council, yeah, and fortunately they've redrawn the districts. I think the districts are more competitive, and there may be a closer balance. But it's been interesting that over the last 30 years, there's always been more Democrats in Duval County than Republicans, but Republicans have always been more Republican council members than Democrats. And the math, you would think, shouldn't work out that way. And part of it was the 4 core districts, we used to call them back 30 years ago minority access, but then they changed it to low economic areas or democratic access, But the reality was they were packing them in because the 4 that were in there always wanted the guarantee that they would be elected, and they were, But one common thing, and this president of the NAACP shared with this, he said, "I'm so glad you're competitive because when they were guaranteed they were going to be elected, they didn't do anything for anybody because they were guaranteed, So maybe competitive districts is going to be an answer to get more bipartisanship and more competitive districts where there are about, several districts that are almost 50-50 Republicans and Democrats. And maybe then they have to, again, start sharing that they've got to be able to cross the aisle to get that vote, to maybe get elected, or at least cross that aisle if they get elected to get the vote to get something accomplished."
That's great. Thank you. All right, so let's move over into the faith and leadership. And Angela, I'm going to start this one off with you. You said in your words, you're the last stop for people in need of desperate care. I think you're seeing these people as people and not a problem. And first of all, personally, I just like to say thank you for the work that you do. How does your faith fuel that work?
Well, without my faith or without God, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing and sustain for 77 years. We are an organization that's grounded in the Word with staff and curriculum. We're grounded in prayer. And so our belief in God sustains us because we know that we can do nothing without Him. We're just the hands and feet. We are His vessel, and we just do the work. We make ourselves available. And when we make ourselves available and for the Holy Spirit to really pour into us, to be discerning, to use wisdom for the men and women and children that we care for, then we provide impact that shows that we have compassion and we care about everyone that's in our facilities, both of our campuses.
Jerry, long time, a lot of probably tough decisions over the years that you've had to make. How about you?
You know, being a Christian, being Christ-led, it gives you both empathy for others, you know, an understanding that we're all in this together. We have more things in common than we have in difference. You know, treating people with respect, you know, I think leads the way of being a good leader. Both treating the employees that you have with respect and also the taxpayer or voters, whoever comes in the door, that's your customer. You know, so I think you always want, you know, although we talked about this when you talked on the phone, you know, in a government office, you can't share Christ with your taxpayers or anything, but you can have them see Christ through you, you know, in the life you live and the example that you live with your employees and with the people who come in the office. And that's the greatest thing we can do is be Christ-like.
Brad, you have a successful business, but my understanding is that you have some nonprofit partnerships that you felt led to participate in. I would love if you'd share a little bit about that you were telling me about with your partnership with Rise, and you know, how you have developed a heart for that type of philanthropy.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously I work in a for-profit, you know, apartment business. We're, you know, in a low margin, you know, high volume business. And so I have to constantly squeeze the margin. I'm constantly trying to, you know, think economically. And, you know, my job is to balance a whole lot of interests: the interests of residents, the interests of investors, the interests of my team, the interest of the assets themselves. It's a complex, you know, kind of thing, but it's capitalistic in nature. And so I was made aware of the sort of capitalistic environment that I work in that has some shadows that I just didn't know existed. And one of those was involving, you know, an example of, let's say, someone coming out of human trafficking who might not be able to pass a background check. Probably certainly couldn't pass a credit check. Well, as you all know, background checks and credit checks are ubiquitous in rental housing today. So what do they do? And I thought, wow, I don't know. I mean, on one hand, we're trying to balance risk here. But on the other hand, I'm like, wait a minute. So if somebody's come out of a 2-year program and they're clean, they're on a new trajectory, they're following the Lord. I mean, there's a lot of things to look at here. I can't look at that. I've got this data he was telling me, no, they don't qualify. So anyway, that led to a real kind of heart change in me, and kind of went like, wait a minute. I can't go in my organization and change that reality. My organization is what it is. I mean, it would not be fair to that. I'm not in control of the organization. I'm a part in it. I can't change that trajectory. But what I can do, and my wife and I prayed about this, was that we can use our resources to do something different. And so, nothing wrong with what I do for a living. I'm very proud of it. I think it's great. But it affords me the ability to go, wait a minute, okay, I'm going to do this over here, and that's kind of the reality. But we can start our own housing initiative. So we can invest in housing privately. And then when we do this, we can do whatever we want. We can, you know, if somebody has somebody who's, you know, coming out of a 2-year treatment program and says, hey, like, this person's ready, but you know what, 4 years ago they tried to kill somebody, I can say, you know what, we can consider that. And I can't do that necessarily in my day-to-day work, So my wife and I started a housing initiative, and we don't have a lot of houses, but we have some, and it's gaining momentum, and I think other people are hearing about it, and more people are getting involved, and it's kind of exciting. So it's kind of a way to, it's not going to solve the bigger problem that we have with sort of the housing crisis, but it's something. It's helping one person, two persons, three persons, and who knows what that leads to. But it's totally a God thing that happened, and just blessed to be part of it. It's great.
Love that story. Thank you. So Nahshon, Doctor of Divinity, minister. At the same time, you're very active in our community with kids. You teach MMA and the after-school programs. How do you bring your faith to helping our city students to want to achieve for themselves and their community?
I'm going to trail off of what Matt said in his opening about that authentic self. I can't display a relationship with God that I don't really have. So I can only minister and present from a positionality of where I am with God. And this is a very vulnerable state because you're constantly putting yourself out there in front of people. And kids are mean. They are mean. And you think you have a bad day or you're having an emotional experience. And I actually had to do close to 1,000 hours of clinical psychotherapeutic training to kind of learn how to listen and empathize without overreacting. So these are learned behaviors that I have. Y'all may or may not get this because people don't really want the smoke. You understand? I can meet you where you're at, but and I tell people I don't lift weights, I lift people. And what I mean by that is it takes a lot. You have to know where you stand with God in order to help somebody else in this journey. And my foundation comes from Isaiah 1:17. It says, number one, learn to do what is right, seek justice, and defend the oppressed. And when folks come through historical trauma, they're fighting, but it's misguided anger or misguided energy. And I want them to put that energy into help building that self-determination, that dignity, and respect for self. And I can't come half-stepping. I have to bring it every time I stand in front of our youth or I stand in front of my constituents to let them know, listen, I'm here with you to help us get to where we want to be. And it's work. It's work. So all that training and all that education doesn't mean anything if you're not bringing that love of God where you're at. And I think that that's something that's very transparent to the youth and to the communities that I've been serving.
That's great. Thanks. Okay, so let's pivot. I'm going to close this out with a lightning round. And this is going to go quick because we're running short on time. But one person in Duval County that has inspired you on your path to leadership. And Angela, you want to go first?
I would say I would call her a great person in the nonprofit world, also of faith, is Jane Lanier. When I moved from Japan here to Jacksonville, she was the one that took me underneath her wing. I didn't know what a nonprofit was. And so she allowed me to work for her. She stretched me. She gave me opportunity that I sit here now for what she has poured into my life.
This guy is not famous at all. He was in construction in Jacksonville about 30 or 40 years. His name was Steve Fudge, and he was my boss at one point. And what he taught me was how to take a butt chewing and not.
Excuse me, one more time.
Butt chewing. Yeah, and not pass it down to the person that's beneath you. And in my business, that is how it goes. I mean, it's chew outs all the way down the line. And what I saw with this man was he would take it, he would would absorb it, and then when it came to the people that were beneath him, he would display a different character. And it took me a long time to learn it. I watched it, but I'm so grateful I got to see it. It's great. It's great.
But you, Nation.
All right. I was talking to Kerrigan a little earlier. I went to elementary school at Mirror Road Elementary. Miss Tona Penland. She called my mom and me for a parent-teacher conference to let her know I was not getting promoted out of 5th grade because I'm not reading on 5th grade level. I broke down crying. Okay. Hey, so I broke down crying, and she says, "Nashawn, if I pass you, I'll be doing you a disservice." I said, "Miss Penland, but you said where there's a will, there's a way." Miss Tona Penland tutored me every day after school for free until I was reading on a 6th grade level. And the way that she believed in me, they use this phrase, hope you up. She hoped me up. And she gave me something to work with. And needless to say, I graduated from Edward Waters College, senior class president with a degree in education. The last class is student teaching. I was given SP Livingston. The subject was reading, and the grade was 5th. And I was able to tell my graduating class about my testimony because I was senior class president.
Wow. Wow.
So Ms. Tona Penland, if she's still out there, I love you, and I'm indebted. When you teach somebody how to read, like the sky is the limit, you know. So Ms. Tona Penland.
That's great. Well, now this is going to be really hard for you four. You're such great people. I'm going to ask you to brag on yourself just a little bit. So, what personality trait or spiritual gift is your superpower in leadership? And Nashawn, let's go the other way. You kick this off.
Okay. Well, I think I'm the only MMA fighter up here.
Are you sure about
My nose is just a little bit adjusted, so if y'all look at my poster, I think she aligned my nose up straight. I can really take a punch. Not saying that I would allow anybody to abuse me, but just being able, as Mr. Jerry was saying earlier, about being able to empathize with people, I think that that's really one of my superpowers, is really just being able to empathize and still love them where they are and help them get to where they want to be.
Brad.
Yeah, I feel like you kind of took mine. Well, I was going to say mercy. I didn't always have it, but I feel like the way I walk now, I don't know if mercy is a spiritual gift or not, but I feel like I have the ability to stand across from somebody and hear their story and just be with them in that and reflect on that and empathize with where they're at. It serves me well. It also is kind of an Achilles heel sometimes. It does create a weakness, but I think that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. You are one of the most present and non-judgmental guys I know. So I bet you spend a lot of time in supermarkets, like stuck talking to somebody for 20 minutes when you need to be somewhere else. But it's a superpower. What about you, Jerry?
I think you'll see a common theme. I think it's about what I would say my greatest gift is. I can sit with an entire room of angry people, like when you're on the city council and you're a district council person and they're all mad at a zoning and they all leave and shake your hands. Or you sit down at supervisor elections with a candidate who's lost and he's convinced that it was your fault that he lost, and at the end of the day, they give you a hug when they leave and thank you. Or a taxpayer who thinks their assessment's too high. Or maybe they should have had that exemption, but they forgot they were supposed to take it off when their mother passed away, and all the empathy and everything, to sit down with them and they're upset when they come in, but when they leave, they know they were treated fair and they, everyone's treated the same. So it's that ability to listen and to sit with anyone and give them the chance to give their story, why they're upset, and listening to them and reacting to it, in a way that they understand. That's been my greatest gift.
In fact, I might know your spiritual gift, by the way, and you probably know that I know.
Okay, how do you know? And what do you know that you know?
Matt told me all about your spiritual gift earlier. So. I'm sorry.
Did you really?
Sure.
Matt. Just think. I'm going to say being faithful, never giving up. When I think about my core days, going through basic training and training at Quantico, a lot of hard times that you want to give up prepared me for life. Working with the men and women at City Rescue Mission, never giving up on them. So being faithful to whatever I am involved in. But we're going to do it, and we're all in boots on the ground.
Wow, that's great. I'm honored to be on the stage with you all. I mean, the amount of heart and courage that you've shown in your lives and your leadership, I think it's just amazing. I've had a chance to know some of you more than others. Just met a few of you in the last couple of days, and I just think I'm just so proud that you're part of our community and you guys are doing what you do. So thank you. Let's give it up for the panelists. And at this point, we'll open up with some questions. I know there was some media invited, and I think we talked about it earlier. I think we're just going to open it up to the citizens. So if anybody has some questions, feel free to take a shot. Mr. Nathan Hayes.
All right, this is for Jerry. First, I just want to thank you, being a native of Jacksonville, just having your service to Duval and just the trust of having you live in that, public life and product, integrity. And listening to you talk today, I'm like kind of scared who's going to replace you, So, but I have two questions for you. First one is, I felt really comfortable writing all those checks to you. Now I'm going to have to find out who I was writing to you. But do you think there ever will be a chance for an NPA, somebody who's not affiliated, that has, strong Christian, grounded, financially conservative backgrounds to make a run at any level in the government?
I think it's going to be difficult. I think it's because of that party identity that everyone starts off with. And you even see it that even when it's a unitary election like we have right now on the mayoral, is that you don't see, it's so interesting, you don't see one side attacking the other party because they're waiting for the runoff. So they're trying to be the most Republican person and then face the Democrat. Even though you've got an MPA in there, write-in and some other candidates, you won't see enough gravitate. I was sharing with one person who's running this time as an MPA, and he says, I feel very good. He says, there are almost 140,000 MPAs. I said, the problem that you've got there is you think MPAs vote for MPAs. They're MPAs because they don't care what party. They'll vote for this party or that party, but they don't block as a party, unlike the two parties do. And I said, so that block that you're hoping is going to vote for you is not a block. It's just a lot of individuals. So I'd like to see that we get to the point that the party doesn't matter, but the way the country's going, it's more divided. I don't see it anytime soon.
And secondly, what's next for you?
Well, I take office July 1 as supervisor of elections. So for the next 4 years, I will be counting your votes. Please go vote. And also, one thing I need a lot of is poll workers. So please consider being a poll worker, because that is at the front line of democracy right there, is right there at the polls.
Put the poll worker slide up, Matt, so people can sign up the QR code.
Awesome. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes?
What's the biggest thing anyone would tell a 15-year-old kid like me that wants to get interested or get involved in the community, politics, stuff like that? I've already done side work and everything. What's the biggest thing or biggest advice you can give?
So a 15-year-old what advice could you give him about getting involved with politics and just community in general, right? Sean, you want to grab that?
Yes, he's actually just canvassing with me over the weekend.
Okay.
You'd be surprised at how many people that can vote but just won't. And they have lost their trust in the system. So I think with any type of leadership, it has to be succession planning. So I really believe in intergenerational. So we can have an elder or a seasoned senior, as well as a working adult and youth, all working hand in hand. I think that that's going to be beautiful, especially when you start talking about poll watchers or poll workers. That goes back into election integrity. For my 15-year-old self, I probably would have stayed awake and civics a little bit longer. But local government is not really taught in any civics course. You're typically taught to vote for the president, and that's top-down leadership. But I would really encourage you to kind of learn about home first, because we're a consolidated government, and consolidated government is supposed to operate under federal standards. So I think that this is a great place to start, and taking what you learned today from the city rescue mission, from the property appraiser, from a developer, and from a candidate. I think your learning curve, you're 20 years ahead of me. If you're so I think that's very important. Even with what we were talking about pertaining to parties, you really want to look at an individual's values, and if you can tie into their values, I think that will supersede whatever party you decide to vote for.
Did you want to?
Yeah, I did want to add to that, and I think you've done some working with Nishan on campaign and stuff like that. But use your resources, which is, if you really, and there are many, not everyone that's elected is this way, our mayor is this way, is if you reach out to an elected official, you'll be surprised the ones, if you want to sit down and just talk to them about politics or how they got in or what they do, the real servant ones will say, yeah, come on by. Really, reach out, because many of them will spend the time with you, but getting involved in a campaign, if you want to learn something about the candidates, when you start hearing when you knock on a door, and someone tells you, oh, well, let me tell you about them. You don't get the other side of the story, but really just using the resources out there and getting involved, but education, everybody will tell you on this stage, is you never realize how important your education is until you're finished with it, and then you realize you're never finished with it, it's so easy. I mean, I've given graduation speeches, to classes, and I tell them, I said, for those in the room that are the valedictorian and the all the high honors, I'm not here to speak to you. You got it. I am your C+, well, maybe solid C guy who worked hard to get where I'm at. I wasn't the A student, but later when I got in college, I learned that's the only way you advance is to the A's. But as a high school, I was a solid C. So what I can tell you, you can get so much further ahead if you apply yourself on that high school level. I mean, it is amazing the colleges that open up to you. If you have a great grade point average, and if you do well in high school, those are the most formidable years in your whole education, is those high school years. So take advantage of that and do the best you can there. You can always bust your butt later and work harder, which I had to do because I was that solid C student. But, I'm just saying, grab hold where you're at and really do the best you can.
Two questions. One specifically for you. What's the minimum age for to be a poll worker?
18. You just have to be a registered voter in the county in which you're a poll worker.
Gotcha. Now, my actual question is, what's Brad?
Right, yes.
But I think it would kind of apply to everybody. I have a friend who's a does a lot of real estate in South Florida, and we were looking at some information. And so I guess in the last year and a half, private equity firms like BlackRock, Blackstone acquired, I think last year we were talking about 3 months ago, they acquired almost 3,500 single-family residential properties in 5 specific zip codes in Jacksonville. Normally from 95, that western part there, normally out there. And you've been all probably hearing talks that they're, trying to create a permanent rental class all around the country, doing all this acquisition. One, is that something I'm concerned as a young, voter, owner, wanting to get, some property one day, residential stuff, whatever the case may be, that is there something that can be done so that, I don't know, we can't compete with that as far as trying to acquire property and the like, and then, I don't know all about how that works. I don't know if it's even the forum to have that.
Sure.
Is there something that can be done from the city council level to block these type of megalomaniacs from trying to take over?
Yeah, it's a great question, and you're definitely getting into some heady property rights issues and things like that. But I personally have shared that sentiment with Airbnbs and how these are moving into our communities and things like that. So, you want to take a swing at it?
Let me give one thing. There is certain things local government can do. Example in St. Johns County. They're now developing entire residential rental communities, where every home in the subdivision is a rental home. St. Johns County said to the developer who did that, you can do that, but after 5 years, they have to go on the market to sell. Now, we don't have that in Duval County, but there are certain requirements that you can put, if you're developing an entire subdivision for rentals. The difficulty is if you're buying those 3,500 properties and they're all over city, now you get in that property ownership right. And again, 1/3 of those properties throughout the entire county is owned not by a permanent resident, but by a renter. Or not owned by the renter, but being rented to the property owner.
Well, I'll just jump on it. Take the bait.
Do it.
I share, I understand what you're saying. I share your concern. But I don't know how you do that and do it in any kind of way that actually works. It's kind of like, rent control. Like, rent control sounds like an awesome idea when you just look at it on the forefront. But when you dig a little deeper, it actually has its own set of shadows that come with it. And I think if you were to, try to put, where does the regulation stop? You say, okay, well, someone can own 5 houses. There's only going to be 10 houses. You can't own any more than 20 houses. Where would that, stop? And I think you gotta. I have no idea what can be done about it, but I do think that it is a problem, and I can share your concern with that.
Yeah, Brian, you brought up a point earlier. I feel like there is an appreciation for natural market corrections that might be coming due at some point, where that investment might not look so good if too many of them buy and these rental rates get too high. The market will speak back. These values will start coming down. So we're already seeing some of that happen across the board. So I don't know if any of these things are forever problems. Certainly causing a supply constraint for the inventory in our housing. But it's a slippery slope when you start regulating those type of things. But it's a great question. So, anything else? Yes.
So Council President Freeman, in a group of Jacksonville Chamber trustees, got up and 100% shared his love for God, inspired all of us business owners and business leaders to be that representative. And I think that was my first time ever in life that I heard, especially from a public servant in a very public forum, witnessing. Do you guys encounter that? How do you? I left inspired. What are your thoughts?
You do hear some of the elected officials, and especially even during campaign season, to talk about their faith, which is great. I'm speaking of the collective body. I wish their walk was as good as their talk. Sometimes, and that's everybody. That's not just elected officials. We're all challenged, by the temptations of the world and everything like that. But it is good, and it's very refreshing to hear elected officials speak of their walk with Christ. It is.
You used the word authenticity earlier.
Yes.
That's permission to be there.
Yes, and it's a public space, and you're a public servant, and once again, I do believe that your values should be on display. My values when I do knock on doors around faith, family, and community. So people are like, well, what's your platform? I said, I like to start with my values first, because if you're not hearing it on the front end, you're not going to hear it through my platform. And so when we're making decisions, the decision may not necessarily be about the platform. The decision is based on the value. How would I like if somebody did this to my faith? How does this impact my family? Would I want this impact to hit their family the way that it hits my family? How does this help our community? And if this is the community, so like those are the ways that I look at it or perceive it. And like you said earlier with that walk and talk, I think right now more than ever, especially on the local level, you're going to see me at Walmart. You're going to see me at the gas station, and you're going to let me know whether or not what I gave you to get in office is what I'm giving you when I'm in office. So I think I think it's a good thing to kind of know their values, and if you're hearing those values and you're seeing those values, I think that's a win-win.
One more question. Yeah.
Is that wrong?
So Deshaun, this one's for you. So last year we had murder capital again with 160 murders here in the city. We had in 2021 $46 million poured into the city for nonprofits, help, faith-based communities. What's the difference of another person just going in another seat of office? And by the way, we're tripling their murder count already this year. And 82% of that is black on black crime. What is the plan?
Number one, one murder is too many. All right. I've been with the families, not of all those murders, but Rashad Fields, who graduated from Raines, 5 hours after graduation, he was murdered. He had already signed a full scholarship for football and academics. He was on an academic scholarship as well as a football scholarship. I met with the family of Gail Clark Jinks, who was murdered in her front yard. I met with the family of Adrian Gaynor Jr., whose mother found out that her son was murdered, or who murdered her son, by the rap lyrics of Who I Smoke. Kind of like you, Ron, I've also ministered in those same communities that you're currently serving. For me, it hits home because a lot of these children could actually be my children. And at the same time, it hits home because it could have been me if it was not by the grace of God that protected me in some of the environments that I grew up in. I try my best to lead by example. From Mr. Antonio Gasson, Mr. Todney Bynes, Mr. Willie Finklin, Mr. Corey Bradford, Mr. Chris Jones, Kyle, the 15-year-old. Y'all missed Gerald. Gerald walked out of here. Gerald went to the city officials, said, I got an awesome boxing program, and I just want to help youth that may be delinquent, and I just need access to capital to be able to run the program. And the city told him that they only had money for those type of programs after the child has already been to the juvenile justice department. We have a reactionary system. So we depend so much on philanthropy that if we don't have philanthropy, we won't be able to counter these behaviors because there's no outlets for these youth when it comes to that warrior ethos, a sense of direction. So I try my best to lead by example, and then at the same time pull in my network to go back into these communities. And Ron, I have no problem with the white man going in the black community working because you are actually committed. But I do believe that sometimes when we have black men that go to these different programs or go for funding, they can't get the same access to capital or support. So therefore it becomes counterproductive. So what I told Gerald was, I run a nonprofit, you use my building for free. Let's do a sign-in sheet. I'm doing what I can within my own personal capacity to help work with our youth that may be somewhat delinquent or challenged. But this is not going to be a one-man or one-woman solution. It's going to take that public-private partnership. It's going to take that shared accountability to be able to counter these behaviors. I do believe that Kids Hope Alliance, they're doing the best that they can. I think that they're ended the contracts or come to a close of those that they had to honor pertaining to the Jack's Journey. And now those funding sources should be coming available to programs that actually have evidence-based models. So, and I love what you do with that social entrepreneur, getting them activated into business early to where they can put money in their pocket for doing the right thing. They had a Red Cap program here in this city years ago. I would like to see how we can get those type of paid internships as often as possible, working with the different corporations within our city if they're able to do it. And then we got to do impacts. And we got to have those hard conversations, especially in those black sectors of the community, because we only highlight the family of the individual who was actually murdered. And we forget about the ones who were shot that are still alive and their families. And then we also forget about the people of the families of the individual who pulled the trigger, because those families are hurting too. So it's not just a one-size-fits-all type of model, but that is my heartstring, which is why I teach martial arts to a lot of our youth, to help them build a sense of respect and dignity and a sense of community. And it's not just black kids that are dying. It can be anybody's kids, and it hurts my heart. Whether you're a black mother, Asian mother, Latinx mother, white mother, when your child is hurting, those tears are all the same. And unfortunately, everybody doesn't share the same compassion and empathy that we have in those situations. But I'm all in. I don't have all the answers, but it ain't a one-woman or a one-man show, Ron. So, but I'm all in at being proactive and not reactive.
Well, thank you all so much for coming tonight. One more round of applause for the panels. Don't forget, if you guys saw the shots of the board, we have City Rescue Mission. We have Nashon Nix running for office. We have Brad Ford doing what he does. And Jerry as well. So thanks again. Appreciate you guys coming out.